CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.
Welcome to the CountryWide podcast as we break down the CountryWide magazine and the great stories of the summer 25-26 issue. This particular story, I'm just deeply proud of her research and just the phenomenal human being that she is, because it's about taking it out of the lab into the field and actually bringing some research that's going to have some great commercial viability, particularly for areas with high aluminium toxicity, which is very much a case for pastoral hill country. Dr. Lucy Bell, who has recently finished a PhD at Lincoln University, joins us. Lucy, congratulations first on graduating with your PhD. That's huge.
Thank you.
Tell us about your journey so that those who at home know about your history and to get to doing a PhD at Lincoln Uni.
Yes, okay. So I grew up on a sheep and beef farm in Otago, which is a pretty epic place to live, but obviously not without its challenges. Naturally, I went to Lincoln University to do a Bachelor of Agricultural Science, found a passion in soil science and did honours in the field, which was pretty epic. After uni, worked for Ravensdown for a bit, and then I was asked to return to Lincoln to do some further research following on from my honours work, looking at legumes for the Central Otago High Country. So I decided to give it a go, and now I'm out the other side.
So there is a novel range of legume species that you've found thrive in this soil type with this high aluminium toxicity. For those who aren't familiar, what kind of areas are we talking about? I was actually quite amazed at how many hectares this actually would cover.
Yes, so there's approximately 500,000 hectares of land in our medium to higher altitude land classes where there's low pH and potentially really high concentrations of aluminium, which is a problem because high concentrations of aluminium result in toxicity in plant species, in particular legumes.
So naturally, in a lot of these areas, we have lucerne growing.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that not a valuable legume still in the system? What are some of the challenges for lucerne?
So lucerne really struggles with high concentrations of aluminium. Aluminium toxicity, the first symptom that we see in plants is inhibition of root growth. So what we can see, particularly in lucerne, is that lucerne, the taproot can develop down into the soil profile and then grow sideways as it detects high concentrations of aluminium. And then as a result, it results in very poor plant performance.
So I found it interesting when we were having a discussion for the article, Lucy, that you've seen in your trials where it'll hit a pan. Is aluminium toxicity usually in a certain part of the profile of soil?
Not necessarily. That has been seen in some places, like in Lees Valley in Canterbury. But in where I was looking at in Central Otago, there was actually really high levels of concentrations of aluminium near the surface of the profile. So not necessarily anywhere in particular.
Yeah, interesting. So there's two particular ones that really stood out in the trial. How many different species did you look at originally?
So I looked at 13 different legume species, a selection of both perennial and annual species. Perennials I predominantly looked at for a higher altitude location, and the annuals for medium altitude that get really dry typically. So annuals are better suited to that environment.
And the standout stars of the show?
The standout stars, so my perennial star at the high altitude field site was Lotus pedunculatus. It had 100% survival, which was incredible compared to some of the other species I looked at, which while they had okay survival through the first summer, most of them really battled through the first winter, and I had low plant survival through the second spring.
Crimson clover was an outstanding.
Yes. So at my medium altitude sites, where it's dry and I was predominantly looking at annuals, crimson clover had great establishment. And then, of course, it's really important for our annuals to be able to set seed and regenerate the following year. And I found that in crimson clover, which is really exciting.
So what happens with your results in the study that was at Lincoln? You've taken it one step further, someone else picks up the bat?
Yes, no, that's the thing about research, is that there's always more to be done before it really can get that out there in the field. So the next step for my research is definitely how we establish these plant species in the hill and high country, because I mitigated some of the challenges associated with establishment to ensure that what I was testing was survival. So we need to look at some research looking at how to establish them, and then of course grazing management and animal performance.
Yeah. What knowledge do we have already around animal health and performance on crimson clover?
There's a little bit out there, some mixed results on it, but honestly, I think for these hill and high country places, the crimson clover is definitely better than what's currently there, which is no legume species quite often.
And what is the importance of having good forage legumes in those systems?
So legumes are super important for any grassland system, but in particular for our hill and high country, because they're the sole source of nitrogen. And legumes are able to biologically fix nitrogen, converting it from nitrogen in the air to nitrogen that plants can use, as well as a high quality forage for the grazing livestock.
So this may look to intensify farming systems in parts of hill and high country farming, do you think?
Not necessarily intensify, but the stock that are there can do better.
Yeah, so from an animal health perspective and a whole system with nitrogen fixing in certain areas that may be poor predominantly.
Yes, exactly. Just a high quality livestock forage, especially when we look at crimson clover with its early spring growth. That's going to be really important for lactating ewes and growing lambs out, so we have more lambs off to the works at weaning time.
Yes, wow, high country farmers will be challenging those lambs off mum from the guys on the flat by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Hey, so your research has been published in the Grass and Forage Science Journal and, of course, now officially in Countrywide, so you've made that Hall of Fame. But, of course, next stage in your career, beyond your PhD, out into the commercial world, what is the thing that you're most looking forward to contributing to the sector, Lucy?
I'm really looking forward to getting out there, meeting lots of people, learning about farming systems, and hopefully having something to offer, something to add to the great farmers we have out there.
Yeah. And do you think there's an interesting, it's a really interesting and important time for farm sort of science extension?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a big believer in science, and it has a big place on farm.
Yeah. And I'm just going to let you in on a little secret. I said at the start that I'm incredibly proud of this guest, and it's because Lucy went through St Hilda's with my baby sister, Ellie.
Yes.
You've certainly achieved a huge amount so far in your career, Lucy, and I look forward to following your journey. So thank you so much for joining us on the Countrywide podcast. And a link to the article about Lucy's research will be in the description of the podcast below as well. So thank you very much for contributing, Lucy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to chat.
CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.